Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Geek Garage podcast, the most inclusive and accessible nerd culture audio program on the interwebs. I'm your host, David, and joined with me is my wife, Lindsay. How are you doing, Lindsay?
Pretty good.
Good?
Pretty good.
Yeah?
Yep, I'm here.
Yeah? Did you have an eventful day?
No.
Well, you went to work, and you got the kids up by yourself.
Yeah,
So,
I did.
Thank you for that. You let me sleep in, and I didn't even realize it until you came and woke me up, and you're like, shouldn't you be getting ready for work? And I was like, oh my God, shouldn't we be getting the kids ready for school? You had already done that, and it was like 8:30, like 15 minutes before I was supposed to call in for our weekly or daily stand-up. So... thank you for all of that. I appreciate it.
Yep, I'm pretty awesome like that.
I know, you really are. That's why I had you come on here.
Yeah.
Is to keep this ship afloat, keep me in line, keep the ship from sinking. So
That's
I'm glad.
me.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Last
you're
resort.
Here. Shut your mouth. So are you excited about today's topic?
Yeah, I'm always excited about the Avengers.
Yeah, who isn't really? So we are continuing on with our marvelous adventure, which we started with Zach when Zach came on the podcast as a co-host. He had barely seen any of the Marvel movies, and so we decided to rewatch them all, but in timeline order. And for those of you that may be new to the podcast or haven't listened in a while, Zach is he's taking a break indefinitely, probably forever. But we just decided to do this without him because we don't need any excuse whatsoever to rewatch and then discuss Marvel movies. Isn't that right?
True. Yes.
Yeah. And I'm very excited. I think Age of Ultron is tends to be underrated at times, and of course Ant-Man is severely underrated, but I think a solid fan favorite. And these two movies also round out Phase 2, so two big movies, and we'll be closing out Phase 2 and. We'll pick back up with Phase 3 probably about a month from now or so. So, we didn't have we didn't have a Facebook poll this week. I don't think. I just asked for questions or any topics that people might want us to touch on between these two movies. Didn't really get any responses that I'm aware of, but that's okay because we have plenty to talk about between your notes and my notes. So, yeah, let's get to it, shall we?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So, like I said, we've been doing this for a couple months now when we started with Zach, but when we were doing it, we just kind of meandered. We didn't really have much of a structure for going through the movies. I just kind of asked him what his initial thoughts were, and then we did a little bit deeper of a dive into the high points and whatnot. We're actually going to switch things up a little bit with these two movies, kind of test the waters and see how this goes. We are actually going to go through the movies chronologically, or from start to finish, but hitting the high notes of the movies and kind of giving our impressions or our thoughts on certain scenes. And I've kind of formulated some hypothetical questions along the way. So that's like I said, we're going to try that out this week and see how it feels, see how it fits, and if it turns out pretty damn sexy, then we're going to march forward with it. And if not, then not much lost, right?
Yeah,
cool.
Sounds good.
So we're starting with Age of Ultron, Avengers, Age of Ultron. Sorry, I pulled a James Bond. With the opening scene, this is a much different set of Avengers from a lot of what we saw in the first Avengers, right? Like
Well, they're already a cohesive unit at this point.
Yeah.
Versus like having to come together and bond and whatnot. So they've already gotten to know each other. I'm sure they've been training together. They've even mentioned that they've been on several missions, taking down Hydra bases, looking for the scepter. So, yeah, I mean, there's no reason they shouldn't be better at working together.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, for sure. So that was cool just to get like right out the gate, like this, these awesome like teamwork fighting scenes, beating down like, Strucker's men and, just gaining on the base and, going after Loki's scepter. That was really cool.
And just the banter between them was just really fun.
Right. Like, isn't shit like the first word of the movie?
I think so.
Like when Tony goes shit, like when he misfires or something like that, and then Cap goes language and becomes like one of the best runners of any MCU movie. Like they...
Yeah, and I find that like really funny because I mean, like Cap was in the army.
Right.
I mean, like
where everyone's a potty mouth.
Pretty much. It's not like he's this sheltered, Boy Scout. Like everyone tries to make him out to be. Like I'm sure he has seen some shit.
Yeah, but I'm sure he's at the same time he's like, there's no need to use that kind of language.
Well, I think that comes from him being like from the 40s, like he doesn't curse in front of women and things like that.
Yeah.
Not so much that he's just like, oh, don't curse at all, or I've never heard such language or anything like that, or it's not that. It's just he was raised to be respectful and
yeah, that's definitely true. That's a very good point. So like I said, we have the Avengers kicking ass, taking names, working as a team. This is our very first glimpse of the twins. They're not called the mutants. I think in this movie they're called the Enhanced for a brief period of time. And of course, that brings us to Wanda Maximoff and Pietro Maximoff. What do you think about the twins, Lindsay?
I think it's very sad. I think, I think obviously they've been kind of corrupted and sold this lie that they are defending their parents and making up for their deaths and, doing this for their country. But that's not really the truth. They've obviously been corrupted and by Hydra.
Yeah.
So.
And then they turn around and it happens again with Ultron.
Yes.
So they got dealt a pretty shitty hand.
Yeah, they obviously they're not too quick on the uptake.
Yeah. But they've lived a rough life. Of course, in WandaVision we get a good idea of some of the stuff that Wanda went through when she was captured and when she was first, I guess. It's been a while since I last watched that scene from WandaVision, but they expose her to the power that's contained in Loki's scepter, and then she gets her powers, and yeah.
Yes.
But anyways, so Tony manages to break in. He starts to look for the scepter, and Wanda comes up right behind him and warps his mind, which sets in motion basically the whole events of the movie.
But it is worth pointing out that she didn't implant this idea in his mind.
Sure.
She just made his anxiety about it worse.
Yeah, it's not Inception.
Right. Like, he was already worked up about this idea of protecting Pepper, protecting his friends. She just kind of, like I said, upped the anxiety level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, for sure. Yeah. So Tony manages to grab the scepter. That's when we get the title card. He grabs it, they leave, title card. And then we have them back at what is it? Avengers Tower? Is that?
I believe so. Yes.
Yeah. And I think for the most part, everyone is like preparing for that night's like party festivities and whatnot because they're celebrating like the capture of the scepter.
Yeah, and they're gonna send Thor off and
Right. Yeah. Yeah. To right the 9 realms and whatnot. But Tony starts tinkering with the scepter before handing it off, and he starts to realize some of the power that it holds, and he projects, to Bruce what he found in the scepter, and they start to talk about how it looks like a thinking brain, only in like, cosmic machine form, basically.
yes.
So I wanted to ask you this, so this is kind of where Tony's idea starts to really hatch. Do you think there would ever be a scenario where Tony's plan for global protection could work?
No. I think it's a good idea in theory, but I mean, I think there's always going to be that next bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no way just to protect everyone in the world, and there's no way to just force people into peace, because that's not really peace.
Yeah.
And so then even if you like manage to take over the world with all of his robots or whatever, and his idea would be to let them live in peace and not have so many weapons and not have war and everything, but the people would kind of start rising up against him, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not even like mentioning like threats from outer space and other planets and things like that are going to come about. Eventually there's going to be something that he couldn't handle.
Yeah. It is a little surprising. I agree with all that, by the way. Very good points. I do find it a little surprising that Tony doesn't have the foresight to kind of see that this plan wouldn't really work out. Like, it's just human nature for people to want to argue with each other. And, when times become better than they were, we still manage to find something to complain about. And that's not being pessimistic. That's just realism.
Yeah. Well, like, even when his robots are deployed to, like, try to bring people to safety or try to keep people from getting into the firefight,
right?
You see people like attacking the robots
and they were freaked out,
damaging them, and because they felt like they were causing part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Tony's time would be better spent learning to or doing his best to protect the ones that he loves and cares about more closer to home, and creating a more cohesive unit among the Avengers than trying to like protect the whole world.
Right. So kind of like Nick Fury's initial suggestion for him and his role in the Avengers, right? It was like a consultant, basically.
Not really him just being a consultant. I don't mind him being an Avenger or whatever. I just mean like instead of trying to protect the whole world, I think he should,
have an active hand in it.
No, I think he should just try to calm some of his anxieties by having a solid plan for like, hey, if it goes to shit, this is where Pepper's gonna go. This is what the Avengers are gonna do. And having a plan like that, rather than trying to be like, oh, I'm gonna protect the whole world, because that's just too big.
Right.
And like, really, his anxieties and his heart is in the right place. He really wants to protect people and not lose anybody. But like I said, it's just too big of a problem. So I think he needed to think a little smaller and have that written out. And I think it would decrease some of his anxiety so he wouldn't feel this overwhelming need to build all these suits. And
right. Sounds like you could be a muse to Tony Stark. Maybe. I'd like to see that. So the next, I kind of title all these chapters of Age of Ultron. I have this next one is Ultron's Escape. The other one was Scepter Diagnostics. But yeah, in Ultron's Escape, so we have the party and celebration. However, Ultron becomes sentient, takes a physical form, and ruins the Scepter retrieval celebration after party. And retreats back to Sokovia, where he kills Strucker and frees Wanda and Pietro. Yeah, so right off the bat, things are just not going great, and Tony's pissed, but Thor is far more pissed.
Yes.
Rightfully so. I mean, everyone really should just be severely pissed at Tony, and like poor Bruce, he's like, I don't know. I tried to.
I helped. I'm sorry.
Yeah, poor Bruce. I love him, but yeah, he got stuck in the middle there, I feel like. So we have the recruitment of Wanda and Pietro from Ultron, and within that recruitment, we learn their beef with Tony Stark and Iron Man back when Tony was dabbling in warfare and whatnot.
I mean, that was like his whole company, like his father Howard. They were all weapons.
Yep.
That's all they did was weapons. And so it's obvious that they got into the wrong hands. They weren't just being wielded by America. They were obviously bought and sold by other countries because of Obadiah.
Right.
And so it wasn't necessarily Tony's fault.
But the whole sins of the father kind of thing is kicked. I mean,
and it was Stark. It was his company, his name,
his tech. Yeah,
was on, the bomb. And so rightfully so, they have some anger directed toward him. Even though at this point he's disabled a lot of the weapon building and things from his company. And they're trying to focus on energy and developing food and medical supplies, things like that now.
Yeah. So. But, as they say, and in this case, quite literally, the damage was done. It doesn't matter really what Tony's intentions are or what his intentions are now. They won't give him a chance to explain himself. They don't care what he has to say. All they know is that him and his family took away their entire livelihood.
Yes.
Which fucking sucks. So, so the recruitment and the kind of brainwashing that Ultron does to Wanda and Pietro, I think is kind of low key. One of the things that makes him a great villain, like he's a machine. And he's motivated by logic, but obviously he also has a firm grasp on like human emotions. Yeah, which makes him incredibly dangerous, and meaning that like he can easily manipulate humans.
Yes, very much so.
Plug into their emotional psyche and tweak things and say certain things. So like he's got the best of both worlds, like the left brain and the right brain. Even though he really only uses the left brain, like he knows how the right brain works. So I think Ultron is like low key, like one of the MCU's greatest villains up until this point, at the very least. So he's starting off on a right foot, with the recruiting of the two, quote unquote mutants. So, next we have the Vibranium Shakedown. The trio seeks out Ulysses Claw to purchase the vibranium needed. So, Andy Serkis. This is the first look that we get of him and his role as Ulysses Claw in the MCU. He doesn't have a big role in the MCU, but he does show up once or twice more. And he is the notorious, what is he technically a miner of vibranium, or is he a buyer in this instance?
I don't know. I just know that he has somehow illegally obtained vibranium and is distributing it to bad guys.
Yes. Yeah. The point to be had here is that it is not on the books and the up and up. It is very much black market dealings and whatnot, because technically all the vibranium belongs to Wakanda, because that's where it sits under. So anyways, so this is where Ultron and the twins go to attempt to obtain some vibranium so they can start to hatch their plan in global domination. And that's pretty much all that the twins know about the plan as of right now. Correct? Does that sound right?
Yeah, they just know that they need this, and so they're going to get it. And
I think that both of them are so blinded by hatred and disdain for the Stark family that at this point they're willing to follow Ultron to the end of the earth and are just kind of blinded by what he's actually all about.
Yes.
So the Avengers attempt to intercept, but it goes horribly. Wanda warps pretty much everyone's minds, and we get a glimpse of everyone's haunting visions, which some allude to future events that we'll see in the MCU, and others are just kind of glimpses into that person's
psyche.
Yeah, right, exactly. The one good one for like future events is Thor's visions. He basically sees Ragnarok happening, events of Ragnarok. That's why he ends up taking off basically right after this, the battle. Natasha, why don't you talk about Natasha?
Well, she sees like visions of her past from the Red Room, where she was also emotionally manipulated as a child to become this amazing spy. But they turned her into a killer, and they also made it impossible for her to get pregnant, and so took away some of her choices. And basically Wanda is just like bringing up all this like emotional trauma like in their past. So yeah, it's not good. And then we have Steve, which is kind of like the same thing. What I felt like Steve's might have been the most ambiguous, at least to me. Like it was just him, he feels guilty, I think, because he kind of feels like he abandoned Peggy, and he never got that dance.
Right.
And so he was just getting to the point in his life where he had a little bit of confidence and he was actually going to go try and get the girl.
Yeah.
And then he was frozen in ice. And now he's back thrown into the future, and he's totally awkward again, trying to catch up.
Right.
And so,
yeah, that one. If you think about it too much, it's kind of heartbreaking. I mean, they're all pretty heartbreaking. I mean, in the events of Ragnarok, we'll eventually get to that, but that's basically the end of Asgard as Thor knew it his entire life. So
yeah.
But anyways, so we don't see on screen the warping of Bruce's mind. But we do see the aftermath of it, which, of course, gives us the very first look at Veronica, a.k.a. the Hulkbuster armor.
Yes.
Yeah.
I also found it really cute / entertaining how Tony was talking to Bruce / the Hulk the whole time.
Yeah.
You could really tell like how they had bonded and how they had obviously been training together with the Hulk.
Right.
Because, he's like, come on, Hulk. Come on, Bruce. You got to listen to me.
Yeah.
Come on. Give me something
Go to
here.
sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep.
Yeah. And he obviously really doesn't want to hurt his friend. At the same time, he's not too worried about hurting the Hulk.
Right, yeah. Because, Hulk survived a lot.
Yeah.
And, he said he put a gun in his mouth and the other guy spit out the bullet. He said that in the first Avengers movie. So we can, we know exactly the kind of damage that Bruce / the Hulk can take. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, they together they kind of lay waste to that part of Africa. So that was not great, but it's a movie. So, so after this we have the calm before the storm. This this is kind of what kicks off. I believe you have a little bit of beef with this movie and the direction that they took with some of the character choices in terms of their relationships and whatnot.
Well, I just felt like Clint is like one of the most underdeveloped characters as far as like backstory and like where he came from and everything. It's never really clearly stated.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they're like, how do we make the audience care about him? Oh, we'll give him a family. That's it. Okay. I just felt like it was kind of lazy on their part.
Yeah, I guess I can kind of see that. I know you mentioned that you would much rather have Clint and Natasha be an item, which also makes sense.
I just felt like they were kind of best friends, kind of flirting this, last movie. I mean, Natasha's entire motivation for like joining the Avengers was to get Clint back.
Mm-hmm.
And then even in this movie, like when something happens to Natasha, Clint's the only one looking for her. He's going, Nat, anybody's got eyes on Nat.
Yeah.
Nobody else is even paying attention.
Yeah.
And so like, I really felt like there was like chemistry there. I felt like they were watching each other's back. So I felt like, it made sense in some ways for them to have a relationship. And they do have a relationship. It's just not a romantic one, which is fine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think every relationship at the end of the day has to boil down to who you have sex with. Sex is nice, feels great, but there's all kinds of relationships to be had in life, and you can't expect one person to fulfill every need and want. So yeah, I think what Nat and Clint had is pretty fucking solid.
Yeah.
They didn't just have like a professional relationship. They developed a personal relationship as well, which I think made their dynamic so great. So, but yeah, like you said, we find out, Clint's, driving the Quinjet, and I don't know why I did the steering wheel motion. It's exactly how he was driving. But yeah, he says he's taking him to a safe house. Turns out to be his house with his wife, and he's got 3 kids?
He has 2 kids and 1 on the way.
That's right. And then in Hawkeye, he's effectively got 3 kids, and they're pretty well grown at that point in time, I think, right?
Well, in Hawkeye, yeah, but I mean, you see them in
Endgame?
Yes.
Yeah.
When they
get dusted.
Yeah. And Nathaniel is, I don't know, 3 or 4, I would guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So we got that. One of the pivotal scenes, in my opinion, I mean, there's a couple for sure, but in my opinion, it's the chat between Steve and Tony. And, you know, this is really like I said, it's the calm before the storm, where not just the storm in this movie, but the events of Civil War, where you really start to see, like, they're talking it out. You know, this is really one of the first, like, conversations that we see these two characters have, which end up being the, you know, for lack of better words, like the leaders of the two teams, you know, the team Stark or Team Cap. And, I thought that this scene was really well done, and, you know, it kind of created a little bit of tension, and, you know, like I said, alluded to
lots of future events.
Yeah, for sure. And then, of course, we get to see Nick Fury pop up, where, you know, he got set up. Tony did. You know, I love the line where he walks in and he's like, "Hello, dear. Tell me what ails you." Like, it took me, I think, maybe 5 or 6 viewings of this movie to realize that it was a John Deere tractor, and so maybe like it was the subtitles. Like, I finally watched it with the subtitles, and because, like, I guess I'm an old man now, and so I have subtitles for everything. But yeah, when I saw that Deere was spelled like John Deere, I was like, "Oh, that's funny." And then we have, like, Nick Fury popping out, and he's like, "You got the scepter for 2 fucking seconds, and you're building a robot army on accident."
You know, obviously Tony wasn't trying to create a robot army right away.
Right.
This thing kind of became sentient on its own. He was trying to scan it, trying to find out more about it, and that's just Tony. He's very inquisitive. He's a science guy. Mm-hmm. He's an engineer, likes to take things apart and find out how they tick. Yeah. So I don't think it's anything he necessarily did on purpose.
No,
I think
absolutely.
it just kind of got out of hand, and Ultron kind of took his idea of, like, world peace and completely manipulated it into something that wasn't good and definitely wasn't going to work. I don't think Tony's idea was the greatest either, but I think Ultron made it even worse, obviously.
Right. I mean, technically, Ultron's plan would have brought peace, but not the kind of peace that humans are looking for, right? Like this utopia that we that the greatest writers of all time have all written about. That's not the kind of peace that Ultron was referring to. He learned about peace, but he realized that there was no peace to be had as long as humans were inhabiting the earth. So, that's where that plan was hatched.
Yeah.
So now we have the genesis of Vision. Ultron uses the scepter to brainwash Helen Cho, the character that we got a small glimpse of back at Avengers Tower. Brainwashes her into helping him develop a synthetic final form for himself. The beginning of the upload of his brain into the Vision kicks off Wanda and Pietro's turn against Ultron, realizing that it would mean their inevitable death. So this is, when I was talking earlier about, like, they're ready to follow Ultron to the end. They're just blinded by whatever that actually means. This is the moment where they're finding out what it actually means, and it means, the inevitable end of them two, right?
Yeah, of all human life.
Right.
Obviously, their goal with ending Stark is, like, to end warmongering and to end violence in their country, and to, but not to get rid of all humans.
Right. Also, like, this is another great scene with Wanda. Like, they've done a lot with her character in such a short period of time up to this point. Like, we see her, warping the minds of certain Avengers. We see her looking into the mind of Vision. And it is a lot of that show, don't tell kind of filmmaking methodology where, instead of, like, exposition where they're like, oh, Wanda, you can read people's minds. That's great. Like, that's going to get a bunch of fucking eye rolls from the audience. But showing exactly what she's capable of, that's, now we're cooking. Now we're cooking with gas. And so yeah, now we see the two twins starting to turn on Ultron, and that's when he basically hightails it out of there, right?
Yes.
Yeah. He leaves with the I don't know, what do you call that? What Vision is in, the
cradle? Yeah,
there you go, the cradle. So Rogers, Romanoff, and Barton, their plan to execute is intercepting Ultron again, another attempt, but this time they actually managed to succeed for the most part. This is also like kind of low key one of my favorite action sequences of like definitely the movie, but like maybe of all the phases up until this point. And I don't know, it's just a lot of fun to watch, like, because it's not just like trying to beat Ultron, it's more like a heist.
Yeah. So
I think that's the added like cherry on top to this scene, is that it's kind of like a heist mission, and so it's just a lot of fun to watch. I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely.
And we get Natasha, showing off her awesome bike riding skills.
Yes.
God, gets me every time. But yeah, so yeah, we have, like I said, their plan is relatively successful. Of course, Natasha is, she's doesn't manage to escape. She gets abducted basically by Ultron, right?
Yes. But they do manage to retrieve the cradle,
mm-hmm.
and they bring it back to Stark Tower.
Right. And we haven't really covered Thor yet. Like, we mentioned earlier that he goes off for a little bit, and he goes to see Dr. Selvig, and I forget exactly where they go, but he goes to these ancient
springs.
Yeah. This nice little hot spring, this nice little area, probably by a little cute B&B, makes really good bacon. I don't know. But they, he gets like the full vision of like Ragnarok and the Infinity Stones. And this is kind of like our big introduction to the Infinity Stones. He comes back to, the Avengers Tower. They're all bickering about what to do with, the cradle and the, somewhat, synthetic organic body inside, and Thor just basically comes in, and just lightning just brings it to life, and ends the argument right then and there. And I forget exactly like what his, do you remember his like reasoning was? Does he give much reasoning for like coming in and just taking control and doing that? Like,
I think he's just upset, like, because he says something like, we've had contact with like 3 of the Infinity Stones within the last few years, and this isn't good, and
mm-hmm.
we need to get this situation under control, so knock it off.
Right. Do you think he felt like it would be better if the stone was brought to life in the form of not like a human, but in the form of Vision, as opposed to it just being a stone? Like, do you think?
I think he just wanted to make sure it was out of the hands of people who were trying to manipulate it for not good.
Right. Yeah. So now, like, the stone has a way to protect itself rather than just being something like a soccer ball or a football that could just be picked up and, be like, all right, I got the stone now. Bye.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Thor brings the Vision to life. We get the Vision. And let's see, sorry. You know, when he first comes to life, Vision is, they're like, so are you good? Are you bad? Are you on our side? Are you on their side? Whose side are you on? They have all these questions, and rightfully so. And Vision's like, I don't think it's that simple. But in the end, they decide to trust him because turns out he can wield Thor's hammer. He can wield Mjolnir. Just picked it right up and handed it to Thor. He's like, we got work to do. And they're like, well, shit. Because this is kind of like a callback to the earlier scene from like the after party where they're all placing bets on who can actually pick up Thor's hammer.
Yes.
And that we had that.
And it's revealed that only the ones who are worthy can wield it.
Right.
And worthy of ruling Asgard.
Right.
And so none of them could really move it, though we get a hint that Steve can. Yeah,
that was a long play there. Like we see it like move just a tiny bit, but like he couldn't move it just yet. Steve really had to prove himself worthy there. So he hands Mjolnir off to Thor, and they decide to form the Alliance and go kick some robot ass. The final countdown. We built this city. Is the Avengers? They learn of Ultron's plan to basically lift part of Sokovia and drop it from space, basically creating a kind of a machine-made asteroid that will decimate life, which wouldn't be good if it actually happens.
No.
Yes, it would in fact not be great. There were unfortunate casualties, unfortunately, but and that will actually lead to more events that will spiral in one of the next movies, Civil War.
Yes.
So, but we're not quite there yet. So we basically just have a giant 45-minute battle scene where with all the Avengers trying to either evacuate the citizens of Sokovia off of the flying rock onto the helicopter where Rhodey and Nick Fury and Agent Hill.
Yes.
Yeah. They all show up with a helicarrier and a couple other, transports to get everyone off the floating rock.
Yes. And Wanda and Pietro are helping at this point as well.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Hawkeye has that fun little talk with Wanda where, he's like, look, we have people flying and, we have an actual demigod and I'm a dude with a fucking bow and arrow. None of this makes any sense, but I'm going to go back out there and kill some machines because it's my goddamn job. And so that was a fun little pep talk and also some like recognition about some like up until this point, there's like, there's Tony with his suit and Thor and Hulk, like, these mighty Avengers. And then there's Natasha and Clint who are mere mortals for the most part. They're badasses, but it's like, what can they do? And they kind of, what's the right word here? Like they kind of acknowledge that right here.
Yeah. I think it's just him acknowledging that he's always felt maybe a little bit of an outcast from some of the other Avengers, him and Natasha. Mm-hmm. But that it's not just like superpowers or having a ton of money or having a flying suit. It's also about your heart being in the right place and also being brave enough to do what is right and get shit done.
Yeah.
And also, Clint and Natasha, I mean, they're very skilled. I mean, they've been training since they were very, very young.
Mm-hmm.
So,
For sure.
But they definitely have to take some Advil after these, battles.
Get a frozen bag of peas, tape it to their knees.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have Wanda and Pietro kind of joining the Avengers more or less and helping, right some wrongs and all that. Through the battles, Pietro ends up running to block bullets that were shot, I believe, from one of the machines.
Yes.
They were meant for. Who were they meant for? They were meant for. Was it Clint? Or yeah, because they had that runner of didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
So he basically dies for Clint, and this begins the lament of Wanda. And her story from here up until Multiverse of Madness is basically just one giant tragedy with some happiness rolled into the mix, but it's
not like her story so far has been fluff and joy. I mean,
right. Yeah, that's so yeah, this kind of starts that snowball of not only loss, but just loss upon loss, and her I don't want to say inability to deal with that, but lacking the proper means, I guess, and the guidance, because that was her last family member. So people need family to lean back on. And she just lost her her only family member, but soon she will find family in Vision, and we'll get to that in Civil War, right?
Yeah,
So what ends up putting an end to the giant floating rock is Tony and Thor combining their machine power and celestial power and blowing it to complete shit. And this makes it more manageable, just a billion little rocks instead of one giant rock, which I'm sure still causes quite a bit of damage, but not as much, global catastrophic damage as what they were once looking at. So, yeah. So then we got the aftermath, and we kind of see where everyone is we have a lot of parting of ways here. We have the Hulk who, Natasha had to talk Bruce into
using the Hulk.
Right. Yeah. Because, Bruce is still at that point where he only sees the Hulk as almost not even as a last resort. He sees it as an infection, or I forget exactly what he called it in the
he
first
doesn't
Avengers.
embrace that side of himself at all.
Right. Yeah. So we have the Hulk leaving on the Quinjet, and we will catch up to him, of course, in Thor Ragnarok. We have Vision, who abruptly ends Ultron like a fucking beast after one of the best clapbacks of all time, where he's like, you are incredibly naive, and he's like, well, I was born yesterday. It's one of my favorite lines. I don't know why. It's just so good. And then we have the reveal of the new Avengers Compounds. This is the upstate New York compounds, and they haven't shown it yet, I don't believe, but they're the plan was to sell the Avengers Tower in New York City, which, if depends on who you talk to, but it could be the new Baxter Building whenever they finally decide to incorporate the Fantastic Four into the MCU, which I believe at this point is inevitable, right? Didn't they announce that
I believe so. At least in some multiverse or another.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm very interested to see where they go with that. I recently rewatched some of the Fantastic Four movies, and I'm curious to see what they end up doing with it. But yeah, we have the new Avengers Compounds. We have the base run by Nick Fury, Agent Hill, Cho, and Selvig. Thor returns to Asgard to learn more about the Infinity Stones and the forces he suspects that have manipulated major events. Stark leaves. He's kind of taking this as like a pseudo retirement almost.
Yeah.
Or at least a temporary, like a sabbatical, I guess, like a superhero sabbatical. Barton retires. More or less, but he comes out of retirement, of course. I guess the next time, well, aside from Civil War, he really comes out of retirement to become Ronin, right? Like, aside from Civil War, it's basically what happens.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, because of Civil War, he was placed under house arrest.
That's right.
And that's what kind of kept him from being involved.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. And then we have basically as the new Avengers at this point, we have Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff. We have Rhodey, Vision, Sam Wilson, and Wanda, which is a pretty solid fucking team. I'd say.
I want to know how Captain America and Natasha are going to train these, because like they can all fly. Like how are they going to provide like strategy for battle?
Well, I mean, that's a solid point.
I think Captain America's probably got it. He's got the foresight.
Yeah, I mean, he has seen real life battle. I mean, so has Sam, of course, but Steve, he's seen some shit. So yeah. And then so I believe I think we just have one post-credit scene in this movie. I can't remember if it's the mid-credits or the post-credits all the way at the end, but we have that shot of the Infinity Gauntlet completely empty and devoid of stones coming up out of that crazy safe, and we see Thanos going to put it on. He says, "Fine, I'll do it myself."
Yes.
So yeah, we get our big hint here that he's going to be the big bad for the next two Avengers movies.
The foreseeable future. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that was Avengers Age of Ultron. Of course, it took us a little bit to get through it because it is an Avengers movie. So we'll do our best to kind of power through Ant-Man, but still leave some room for fun discussion and whatnot. So with Ant-Man, we get a super informative but brief cold open where we get an exterior shot of the SHIELD HQ in the 80s, where I guess it was kind of still under construction, but they were still kind of operating out of there. Maybe parts of it were built and they were like adding on to it. It's kind of what it looked like from the exterior shot. But we see a young Hank Pym with some pretty good facial degeneration, whatever they call that.
De-aging?
De-aging, yeah. They used it for, I think, used it for everyone except for Peggy Carter. They kind of used the opposite for her. They aged her up a little bit. Maybe they just threw on some makeup. Either way, the point of this scene is to just understand the disdain that Hank Pym has for literally everyone at SHIELD. And rightfully so, right?
Well, he just doesn't want his ideas and his property being misused.
Mm-hmm.
And he's afraid of it being misused.
Yeah.
So he wants to control where it goes.
Yeah, like he has a good understanding of the inner workings of it and what it could be used for, and he realizes after developing it, it's kind of like, you know, Dr. Frankenstein, where he's like, I got to shut this shit down, kind of.
Yeah.
So Hank Pym resigns from S.H.I.E.L.D. in hopes that their attempts to recreate the Pym particle will fail. It'll all fail without his help. And it kind of sort of works up until we jump to present day.
Yes.
And in present day, we're introduced to the world's sexiest burglar, which is Scott Lang. We see him getting out of prison right before getting punched in the face, and he says, "Y'all have the weirdest goodbye rituals." But he gets picked up by his friend. Who is it? What's his name? Luis. Yeah. Who is probably one of the best characters, like just as far as comedic characters go. Like he's so funny, and I hope that he is in more movies in the future. Definitely Quantum Mania, which I believe comes out next year, 2023. Eventually we'll get it. But yeah, so he immediately Luis starts talking to him about like jobs that they can pull now that he's out, and he's like, "No, I got to be on the straight and narrow." And we see him at Baskin Robbins. Of course, we all know Baskin Robbins always finds out. But they were nice to him. They let him take a smoothie on his way.
Yeah. So we see him working at Baskin Robbins, and they let him go because they find out about his prison record.
Right. Yeah.
And what's funny about that is like he was like, "Oh, I'm not worried about finding a job, even though I'm a con. I'm not worried about it. I have degrees in electrical engineering." Mm-hmm. And then, then he's kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel working.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It turns out that it doesn't really matter what you have a master's in. If you have a record, turns out that it's hard to get a job anywhere.
Yeah.
So,
but he has a daughter. He's trying to like turn his life around. So he's like, he's trying to stay not in a life of crime. But once he gets fired from Baskin Robbins, the idea of staying away from crime is kind of loosened up.
Yeah.
He's figured out that it's going to take over a year for him to get custody of his daughter, or 50-50 custody of his daughter.
Yeah, it was like 600 some odd days.
Yeah, so 2 years then.
Right.
For him to be able to try to find a job, get settled, pay child support, get his own apartment. So he decides, okay, well maybe I could do one last job.
And that's it.
Yeah. And then so that's what leads eventually to them breaking into Hank Pym's house.
Yeah, but we don't know that at the time. We just know it as some spooky old mansion.
Right. And so he steals the suit, the Ant-Man suit. He thinks it's just some old motorcycle jacket. He's pretty pissed because he thought this safe was going to have all these jewels and gold and money. Mm-hmm. But all that's in there is this weird motorcycle jacket. So he just goes ahead and takes it. We get a brief preview of what the suit does. He tries it on and shrinks himself down on accident.
Trial by water.
Yes. And
this sequence was pretty funny. Like,
yeah, we hear Hank.
He comes through the suit.
Yeah, we hear Hank Pym trying to give him instructions on kind of what to do. Anyway, once he gets back to normal size, he was like, that was really messed up. I am taking this suit back where it belongs. he runs the suit back where it belongs, into the spooky old house, puts it down, leaves the spooky house, and there's cops everywhere. And so he gets arrested.
I love how he's like, I'm not stealing. I was returning the suit that I stole. Oh, shit.
Yeah. To top it all off, his wife has remarried. And so his daughter, who he desperately wants to spend more time with, has a new stepdad who's also a cop and gets arrested by. So that's just tops it all off for him.
By the guy who gets typecast as a cop in like every single thing that he's in. I guess because he's Italian and he plays a cop really like he's a cop here. He's a cop in Will and Grace. I've seen him in like a couple other things where he was also like some sort. He was a cop in The Other Guys with Will Ferrell and Marky Mark.
Yeah.
So he just plays that character really well.
So anyway, he is arrested, and obviously he's like, I can't stay here. I can't go back to jail.
Turns out that Hank is his lawyer.
Yeah. So Hank breaks in, gives him some advice, and manages to sneak the suit in.
Gives him kind of a job interview almost.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, if you can put the suit on in 10 seconds and escape the prison, then I might have a job for you.
Yeah, pretty much. And so he does. And so then we get back to the Pym household, where he starts figuring out what all this is and what Ant-Man is and what the powers are and how the suit works.
Yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Right. Yeah, he meets Hank and finds out that he can control ants with his mind, sort of.
Yes.
I mean, he stimulates their receptors through a device that looks like a hearing aid.
Yes.
So, and he can make them carry little cute sugar cubes.
Yes. We also find out that he needs something stolen.
Right.
Which is why...
I need you to break in and steal some shit.
Yes. After he says, okay, I'm back on the straight and narrow. Oh, wait, I'm breaking in somewhere to steal something else. We also find out that Hank has his daughter on the inside of Pym Technologies, which he's no longer a part of. He was thrown out for not sharing his technology.
Right. And it looks like the plan is to turn it into cross technologies or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We see like a little model of the soon to be like renovated building or new building or something like that.
Yeah. So Hank Pym has his daughter Hope on the inside, kind of manipulating this guy that's over Pym Technologies now, Darren Cross.
Right.
And Darren is trying to recreate the Ant-Man suit, and his plan is to use it for basically soldiers and just creating war, and he's basically using it as a weapon.
Yeah, he wants to sell it to Hydra, basically. Like the remaining parts of Hydra. Like, even though, we're past the point of Captain America, the Winter Soldier, where, they took down S.H.I.E.L.D. / Hydra. Apparently, parts of Hydra are still very much alive and working, so... that's his plan, is to have the technology sold off and create, little tiny soldiers that can go where no soldier has gone before, literally. So,
yes,
yeah.
So basically, they've got a plan to break in, and Scott's learning how to use the suit and learning how to use its powers, learning how to shrink down, and also training with Hope, which was a hilarious scene.
Yeah, the whole training montage was pretty great. I mean, it's not necessarily like a traditional montage. You know, there's some breaks in there with some dialogue, but yeah. Like you said, his training with her, he's like, I'm gonna go easy on you, and she's like, well, you're gonna regret that. And then effectively kicks his ass.
Yeah. Anyway, then they come across a problem. They need some sort of part to put this whole heist together.
Yeah.
Hank says, oh, it's being stored in, Stark Technologies. It's just in this old warehouse. No big deal. Little does he realize that Tony has turned it into the new Avengers Compound.
Right.
So they decide to break in to get this part, thinking it's just some old warehouse, bunch of filing cabinets, and Falcon shows up. And
boy, does he.
Yeah. So
what's impressive here is that like Falcon wasn't expecting to fight a tiny dude, but he adapts pretty damn quickly.
Yes.
Like we get a good look at how great of a soldier and a fighter Sam is right here. Like, I mean, obviously at the end of the day, Scott ends up with the part that he was looking for and escapes with it. But, like I said, Sam wasn't expecting to deal with a literal Ant-Man who can shrink and go back to normal size in, milliseconds. But he adapts to the situation. That's why he's an Avenger.
Yes. Yeah, very funny. I always appreciate Falcon.
Yeah. He's
great,
amazing.
Yeah, great character. Okay, so now they have the part they need. Now they find out they need a few extra hands to help the heist continue. So they end up having to hire Luis and some of the other cons. Yeah,
we got T.I., I forget his character's name, and then the Baba Yaga guy. He doesn't talk about the Baba Yaga until Ant-Man and the Wasp, but he's super funny. They're all very funny.
Yeah. So they have to school them on who Ant-Man is and all of the powers and everything.
Right.
So then they get this plan together. They're going to go forward with the heist. And
yeah. They end up crashing the party, or attempt to crash the party of this big unveiling of the technology at Pym Technologies, because at this point Darren Cross has successfully recreated the Pym particle, or what his version of the Pym particle is, and so they Hank and Scott and everyone else, they kick their plan off with sneaking into the event, and he says it's not just a heist, like it's a demolition more or less.
Yeah.
And he ends up getting captured, or the three of them end up getting captured, but they manage to turn the tables, knock out some of the Hydra agents, or shoot them, kill them. I don't know what happens, but I do like one little detail where Luis is, he knocks out that bodyguard, but he's not like a bad guy. He was just a bodyguard working for Pym Technologies, and he goes back. He's like, oh, I forgot the guy. Like, I noticed that this last time, where he actually goes back for him to make sure that he didn't like blow up and shrink to death inside the building.
Yes.
But yeah, we have Scott, who manages to chase down Darren in the helicopter.
Yes.
And we see for the first time Darren Cross's ability to use the Yellow Jacket suit and shrink down using his new technology. And, we have that fun fight scene. This is basically just one long fight scene broken up a little bit. but kicks off with a little bit of music from The Cure, where he says something and then Siri is like, okay, playing The Cure. It plays like that epic music. But they end up crashing into someone's pool in their backyard while they were outside grilling.
Yes. So they're fighting. The Yellow Jacket gets caught in a bug zapper.
Right.
During this time, I guess the barbecuing family has wised up and called the police.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, family.
Right. So Ant-Man is arrested and is being taken back to jail. When they hear over the intercom that something's going on at his daughter's house,
right.
Which is also the stepdad's house.
Yep.
So they end up turning around and going straight for the house. Turns out Yellow Jacket has escaped from the bug zapper and is threatening Cassie for some reason, the daughter.
Yeah. His plan is I don't know what his plan is.
It's very vague. Like what exactly? Like, okay, you're trying to get away from your mortal enemy here and trying to get away with this technology, and you're gonna go kidnap his daughter, and that's gonna make him leave you alone.
I don't even think kidnapping was his goal. Like I think he wanted. I don't know, like, how do you feel about Darren Cross as a villain? Like, I feel like he's a little cut and paste for this movie.
I don't think he was very fleshed out enough.
Yeah.
But I also feel like this movie is what a superhero movie should be. You're not meant to think real hard about it. Mm-hmm. It's just fun.
Yeah.
And Ant-Man is fun. He's got a lot of one-liners. Mm-hmm. And he's just an interesting character. Like, this is not I mean, I know some people do, but in my opinion, it's not where you're supposed to be going deep into the lore and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, he's going after the daughter. We get this amazing scene where they fight on top of a Thomas the Train.
Our son Charlie loves this scene.
Yes.
Like, this is kind of the only part of the movie that he will watch. But we have to, like, bring up the clip from YouTube where...
Yes. Yeah. The Thomas fight scene where Ant-Man and Yellow Jacket are fighting with Thomas, and then the Thomas the Train gets, like, blown up and thrown into the yard, which is just hilarious.
It is. I laugh every single time.
Anyway, end of the day, Darren loses.
Yeah. Scott decides that it's a callback from earlier in the movie where Hank talks about his wife going subatomic, and that's how they end up losing her. She realizes that the only way to succeed in the mission that the two of them were on was for her to go subatomic so that she could reach the part of the ship that they were trying to get to.
Yeah. And
Scott decides to do the same thing, make the ultimate sacrifice, but he manages, like, we see him tinkering with that thing on his belt that Hank told him not to do, but he did it anyways because, he's not just some Joe Schmo. He's got a master's in electrical engineering.
Yes.
And so he went to the quantum realm, manages to pull himself back, but unfortunately for Hank, doesn't remember anything about it.
Yes. So
yeah. That's more or less Ant-Man, right?
Yes.
And we have two post-credit scenes with Ant-Man. We have a hint at the Wasp, which we get with the next Ant-Man movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp. Was the Wasp his wife, Hank's wife's character, and
Yes.
so it's kind of getting passed down to her.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's just an updated version of the suit, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And so Hope, Hank's daughter, is going to become the Wasp, basically. She's been begging to use the technology in the suit the whole time, and he's like, no, because he's trying to protect her,
right.
which is why he hires Scott instead of just letting her do it.
Yeah. Right.
But I'm really excited about her character. She's, she's smart, and she's not overly sexualized, and she's just another fun character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's great. I like her a lot. She's a very undervalued character. She's amazing. And then we have our second post-credit scene at the very end, which is just a straight-up clip from Captain America: Civil War. I can't remember if they actually show them capturing Bucky, but it's Steve and Sam, and they're talking in a warehouse of some sort, and they're like, what's our next move? And Sam says, I know a guy. And I feel like this is kind of a fun, like a half serious callback to the Ant-Man and Sam's fight at the very end of the fight, where he manages to escape successfully with that reactor, or whatever part that they were looking for. Sam's like, Cap can't ever know about this. And so I feel like it's a fun callback to him saying that when he's like, I know a guy, and you realize, like Sam never told him that he fought an Ant-Man. So and of course we have the right before the credits, we get the one of Luis's amazing voiceover
Recaps.
Yeah. Those are always amazing. I hope that they do those forever.
Yes.
That'd be great. But yeah, it turns out that Falcon is definitely looking for him, and Ant-Man will return.
Yes.
And on multiple occasions. So.
Yes.
So that was Ant-Man and Avengers Age of Ultron. You want to do some shit that doesn't suck real quick, and then put a pretty little bow on it?
Shit that doesn't suck.
This week, my shit that doesn't suck. I've been watching a couple stuff. I've still been watching Seinfeld. Almost done with it. I think I'm on the 8th season, and there are 9 seasons. So I'll be sad to see it go. But it's been fun rewatching it. And then I took my brother this past weekend to go see Sonic 2, and it was fun. Very similar like the first movie. It's very much a kid's movie, but there's some adult stuff in there. Like adult humor that your average 8 to 11-year-old isn't really going to pick up on. So it was fun. It's not bad, but it's not like it's a fun.
It's a kid's movie.
It's very much a kid's movie.
And it wasn't completely miserable to sit through, so that's something.
Yeah, correct. Absolutely. What's your shit that doesn't suck?
Mostly lately I've been binging Stuff You Should Know.
Okay. It's a good podcast.
Yeah. I've just been learning about all kinds of things. I've been learning about I believe it's China's terracotta army. I've been learning about how hot air balloons work. Just all kinds of random things. Yeah.
That's what that podcast is so, or why it's so great, is just like these random little nuggets of information. Like,
yeah,
on
and
a
I just
weekly
find
basis.
it all like very interesting and humorous for the most part.
Yeah, we were listening to a couple episodes a week or two ago while we were driving in the car, and it had been several years since I last listened to that podcast, and I couldn't remember it being that entertaining. Like, they were joking around and stuff, and I feel like when I was listening to it, they were a little bit more on the serious side. Like, they would cut up every once in a while, but maybe it was just like the topics that they were talking about.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the topic.
Yeah, like how serious it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Cool.
Like I said, I've been learning a lot, and I like it, and I think everyone should check it out, at least for a few topics.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't think of hardly anything that hasn't been covered at some point. I mean, I think they're going on like 700 or 800 episodes or something like that at this
It's
point.
a lot.
Yeah. So
I wonder if we'll get there. Maybe.
We're going to have to pick it up the pace.
I don't know if I could handle more than once a week.
Yeah.
It's a chore enough to do this with it not really making much money and the kids keeping us busy. It's it's a chore, but a very fun chore. So, yeah. All right. Well, listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. Like always, please follow the podcast on your favorite streaming or podcast application. Leave us a rating and review if you haven't already. Subscribe to our Patreon if you are willing to donate a few dollars here and there to help a cool cause such as this. I believe that's going to do it. Yeah, kind, stay geeky, and eat lots of cheesecake. Bye!